Hey everybody, my name is S.K. Rossi. I am the Director of Advocacy and Policy here at the ACLU of Montana. I wanted to give you a little bit of information about the probation and parole system in Montana because we just released a report on how the probation and parole system actually feeds mass incarceration. People actually forget in the conversation around mass incarceration that probation and parole is part of that. They think of people in prisons. They don't think of people on supervision who are being funneled into prisons for unfair reasons. The probation and parole system is supposed to be a support mechanism for people who are coming out of prison or have been convicted of crimes to reintegrate into their communities. But what it's become is more of a watchdog agency that is looking for people who slip up on probation or parole so they can be sent back into the detention system. Very briefly and very basically, the difference between probation and parole is that parole is a term that's used for when people are released from imprisonment and going back into the community, and probation is more generally used for people who have gone to court and receive probation or supervision in lieu of being detained or going to prison. Probation and parole actually funnels people into our jails and prisons here in Montana. In 2015, the number of people revoked from probation and parole into prison accounted for 74% of our prison admissions. That is a huge number of people going back into prison or into detention because they violated their parole, not because they committed a new crime. And that's one of the biggest issues, is that when you're on probation and parole, there are lists and lists of rules you have to follow. And many times when people get revoked from their probation and parole, they're being revoked not because they have committed a new crime, but because they broke rules. And that's not fair. People shouldn't have to go back into detention because they broke rules. And when you talk about detention, people actually move up. 83% of the people who move up in the detention levels in Montana, so from lower level detention all the way up to prison, over 80% of those people are moving up in detention because they've broken rules, because they've committed these probation and parole violations, not because they've committed a new crime. And this actually takes the biggest toll on poor folks and people in rural communities, because one of the issues that they face is that they have to complete all these obligations, like find a job, find housing, complete treatment programs, do all these things, and sometimes A, those treatment programs and services aren't even available in their communities, and B, it's really hard for someone who's been convicted of a crime or has been formerly incarcerated to find a job or find housing. So to wrap up this very short and simplistic video, probation and parole is stacked up against people who are forced into that system. It's set up for people to fail, and Montana has to figure out a way to fix it. So please stay tuned for more videos on probation and parole. We're going to have researchers, social workers, and people who have been personally impacted by this system talk to you a little bit more about why it's problematic and why it needs to be